Hello and welcome to Addicted to Books. I'm your host YA, and in today's episode, I'm going to give you a brief summary of a book by Wangari Maathai. It's called The Challenge for Africa, and this book was published around 2010, around 2009 there. And let me just start off by introducing Wangari Maathai. So, Wangari Maathai was the founder of the Green Belt movement. She was also the first woman to earn a doctorate in biology in East Africa. And also, she was a recipient of numerous awards for her work on environmental and social issues. But one thing that she's majorly known for, aside from her work on the environment, is that she was the first woman, or the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and this she won in 2004. So she used to live in Nairobi, Kenya, but unfortunately she passed away. So if you'd like to learn more about her and her work, you can visit the Greenbelt Movement website, and also you can check out the Wangari Maathai Foundation, where they basically they continue doing some of the work that she did while she was still alive. So this book is really amazing because there's so much going on right now in the world, that is in 2021, and we have things like the climate change. We're still feeling the effects. We have political unrests in many places, and also above everything we have the pandemic. So some of the principles or the strategies that she listed in this book can still be applied today. They can still be used to solve some of the issues that we're facing right now. And in today's episode, I'm just going to cover the introduction, and I'll just cover the first chapter, that is the first part, because this book is quite broad and I don't want to miss out on anything. And if you check out the audiobook, it's approximately 15 hours. So there are a lot of important things she speaks of, and I just want to list them, and hopefully this will motivate you to go and read or listen to the book on your own. So in the introduction, there's one quote that she's written. It says, "We all share one planet and there is one humanity." So let's take care of our environment. Let's have respect for human lives. Let's protect our human values and our human rights. And let's see what chapter 1 is about. So chapter 1 is titled "The Farmer of Yaoundé." She starts off by writing, "The challenges of Africa are real and they are vast." She explains that sub-Saharan countries are falling short of the benchmarks for some of the 8 Millennium Goals agreed on by the United Nations in the 2000s. These are health, education, gender equality, and environment sustainability. She explains, conflicts ravage communities as rival groups vie for political and economic power, and the importance of Africans' cultural heritage to their own sense of themselves still isn't sufficiently recognized. Wangari lists some of the progress and achievements in the economic and political areas of the African countries that belie the idea that Africans cannot take charge of their own affairs. Some of this progress, or rather achievements, are political stability, where the number of coups in certain countries have reduced. That means Africans at that time had been able to hold general elections, that is, democratic general elections, ever since they were able to gain independence. Wangari writes that even though some African countries have been able to achieve this economic and political progress, the efforts to battle corruption are not completely waged and principled. She explains that visionary leaders are still few in number, and even though the world recognizes that Africa will be hit hard by climate change, the transfer of green technology from industrialized countries to the continent is still slow, and forests in Africa continue to shrink. In September of 2007, Wangari was the Goodwill Ambassador for the Congo Basin Forest Ecosystem, and she had gone to familiarize herself with the Secretariat of the Congo Basin First Partnership, which is known as CBFP, and also the Commission of the Forests of Central Africa, which is also known as COMIFAC. And she had also gone to meet government ministers responsible for the economy and management of the forests. While she was there, Wangari noticed farmers practicing common methods of farming which were damaging to the environment all over Africa. She explains that this method of farming directly contradicted every method of soil and species conservation. Wangari was able to note the irony of the situation. She was in Cameroon, in a luxurious hotel. She was going to attend meetings to discuss on how to safeguard the Congo Basin forests and ensure that the forests are sustainably managed for the benefit of everyone. Yet she knew that regardless of what they were doing, if they do not work with these farmers and everyone across Africa, not only will they not save the Congo forest, but they might also be unable to halt the desertification underway across the continent. Wangari explains that other big factors that also lead to desertification are mining practices, timber companies, and illegal logging activities, conflicts, poaching, and so much more, and she calls to activists, political leaders, professors, and development specialists to craft policies that will be applied in Africa for utilizing natural resources sustainably and sharing them more equitably. She writes that the continent's agriculture might not be in such a poor state today if the government had prioritized on practical measures that helped their people rather than investing on attention-seeking projects or misguided demands of outside investors. So the challenge for Africa lays down a set of principles for what it will take to change the life of that farmer who represents the 65% of Africans who continue to rely on subsistence agriculture. So in a nutshell, the challenge for Africa lays down the following. It lays down a set of principles for what it will take to change the life of that farmer who represents the 65% of Africans who continue to rely on subsistence agriculture. It also lays down principles on how to avoid crises of the future and to ensure that Africans alive today experience good governance, basic freedoms that include respect for human rights, development that's both equitable and sustainable and peaceful. She argues that Africans need a revolution in leadership, not only from politicians, but an active citizenry that places its country above the narrow needs of its own ethnic groups or communities. She explains that those in power have to recognize that from the way Africa has been conducting its affairs of state has neither protected nor promoted the welfare of the continent's citizen nor provided for the long-term growth and sustainability of its nations. The revolution she proposes requires the development of policies that work for the benefit of all citizens rather than the advantage of a few. It entails encouraging the dynamism and entrepreneurship of African people, protecting them from unfair competition, and nurturing economies that add value to the commodities the rest of the world desires so much. It demands that leaders not only support honesty and transparency in government, but also embody it in their behavior as well. No longer should leaders play politics with ethnicity, grab public lands, sell off national resources, and loot the treasure or tolerate such actions by others. They must instead foster values such as fairness, justice, and working for the common good rather than turning a blind eye to violence and exploitation or promoting narrow self-interest or opportunism. Wangari explains that the most important quality that African leaders need to embrace is a sense of service to their people. They should not take advantage of they should not take advantage of their vulnerability and instead remove the causes of why so many continue to live in fear. She explains that everyone needs to rid themselves of a culture that tolerates corruption and inefficiency as well as self-destructive tendencies and selfishness. They must grab available opportunities and not wait for someone to make development happen for them. They must protect what is theirs, and they need to hold politicians and themselves accountable and value long-term sustainability and not short-term gain and instant gratification. She explains that we should plan wisely for an uncertain future rather than settle for the present. Wangari explains that Africa has been on her knees for too long. Whether during the dehumanizing slave trade, under the colonial yoke, or begging for aid from international community, paying illegitimate debts, or praying for miracles, all Africans must change the mindset that affects many colonized people everywhere. We need to believe in ourselves again and understand that we are capable of clearing our own path and forging our own identity. That we have the right to be governed by justice, accountability, and transparency, and that we can honor and practice our culture and can make them relevant in today's needs. In short, we no longer need to be indebted financially, intellectually, and spiritually to those who once governed us. We must rise up and work. In confronting these challenges, the environment needs to be the center of decision-making. She explains that she believes in Africans determining our own future rather than relying on outside sources, and that the fate of the continent depends on its citizens. She emphasizes that Africans must decide to manage their natural resources responsibly and accountably. They should agree to share them more equitably and use them for the good of fellow Africans, or otherwise they will continue to allow outside forces to seduce or bully their governments into arrangements that allow those resources to be moved from the continent to other places. It is for Africans to determine whether they will work to build their own talents and abilities, whether they will strengthen their democracies and institutions of governance, and whether they will foster their people's creativity and industry, Or instead, they will continue to nurture a culture of dependency through the acceptance of loans and development assistance, which has resulted in too many Africans waiting for outside help instead of unleashing their energies and capabilities and taking actions today that will improve their lives in the future. So again, she brings up the point only Africans can resolve to provide leadership that is responsible, accountable, and incorruptible. She says it is they who must embrace their cultural diversity, restore their sense of self-worth, and use both to create thriving nations. It is they who must begin the revolution in ethics that puts community before individualism, public good before private good, and commitment to service before cynicism and despair. Finally, she ends this chapter by saying these principles not only apply to Africa but to everyone on earth. So, from this first chapter, if I could describe it in one word, I would say self-sufficiency. Where Wangari talks of Africans taking control of their own destinies, that is making sure we have a just system where we have leaders who are not selfish, where we have leaders who invest in the people's talents, who do not take advantage of our vulnerabilities. And we need to understand that we are one humanity, and we should be able to respect ourselves, have that human respect. We should respect ourselves as Africans. We should be able to integrate our cultural values into our system today. And I think that is something that we still lack in 2021. So this concludes chapter 1, and I hope that we'll be able to take this book and read it, and we'll be able to implement the principles that she's listed in the book. As she's written, these principles not only apply to Africa, but they apply to everyone on earth. So thanks for listening, and in the next episode, I'm going to finish up on the summary of the challenge for Africa. So until then, stay safe and bye.